Okay.
Hey, what's going on? Guts Discipleship Live. This is Pastor Jeremy right here every Thursday at 12 o'clock, and I want to thank you for joining us. So glad that you're hopping on with us, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on YouTube, whatever it is. Thanks for joining us. We're glad that you're here. And as always, want to encourage you to be involved in the conversation. We're going to have a lot of fun today. Got a good friend of mine with me, and we're gonna discuss just really the power of God in how He transforms lives and what He does in our life. And whatever your story is, I'm telling you that your story matters. And it's so important to hear people's stories. You know, it's something that we often overlook, and sometimes we're so silly to even compare our stories. And I was thinking about that, and I'm just going to throw this out there as even as in my intro, and we're warming up and welcoming you to the show, is whatever your story is, your story's got power. And if you grew up in a church setting, in a church environment, man, we celebrate the goodness of God in your story. And if you grew up in a difficult situation and God delivered you out of a lot of things, then we celebrate the power of God in your situation. But both of them are under the covering, the mercy, the grace of God, and all of it in learning people's stories is to be inspired, to be motivated, and to see the goodness of God, to see what God's about in people's lives, and to see what God can do. And so I just want to thank you for joining us, and we're going to do that today. We're going to talk to Harold in just a few moments, and we're going to talk a little bit about his story and just learn a lot from what God's done in his life and where he's at, and get some encouragement. So again, thanks for joining us. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We'd appreciate that. And like this video, share this video. Text somebody right now that you're watching. Put it on the background. If you got kids around you, man, we both understand that feeling. And just put it on where you can listen and be involved. And if you can chime in, we'd love your encouragement. We'd love to know that something's hitting with you. Anything that's encouraging you that you want to maybe hear more about, or if Harold or I say anything that triggers some thought that you'd like us to talk a little bit more about it, we'd be very glad to do that. But we'd love to help you in any way we can. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer those. So this is real-time community, and so we'd love for you to be involved, and glad you're here. This is my friend, Harold King. Harold is here, and just a little background, and he's going to tell the story. But Harold is an entrepreneur, a businessman. He's married and has been married for
10 years.
10 years, and has two beautiful children. And he was an intern here at Guts Church, as was I. I believe you were the year after I was, if I'm not mistaken. Or 2 years. 2 years, yeah. 2 years after.
Yeah.
And just has a very cool story. Grew up here in the area of Tulsa, around in Bixby, I believe. Went to high school. So we're going to talk about all of that. But this is a man who he's traveled the world. He's passionate about the good things of God. He's passionate about the gospel. He is an example on so many fronts. It also has had a lot of challenges and a lot of victories that have developed and forged a lot of that character and discipline that you're going to hear about today. That is causing a lot of his success and a lot of the victories that you're walking in. And so we're going to do that. But before we get into your story, how's quarantine going for you?
I'm not a fan of quarantine at all. It's not something that
it's not really
want to
built
continue
for
forever. No, but of course, like everyone, it's been a cool time just to use it as a season of purification, of focus, and just kind of really getting dialed in. Of course, I think we've all seen like there's a ton of things that don't matter.
Right.
There's a lot of things we give our time to that don't matter or benefit us in any way or get us closer to the lives we actually want. So, that's a big thing I've got out of it. It's been great, obviously. Everyone getting to spend more time with their families and things like that.
I do appreciate, for what it's worth, having reduced the busyness, right? Like, I miss some things. Of course, we miss being able to be around people. We miss being able to go places, but some of the busyness of I got to get to this and to get to that practice and get over here and get the kids here and I got to be at this, like that part of it, I don't miss it a lot. I mean, there's definitely a lot of activity there, but
totally.
Some people, everybody's wired differently. That might be me. Another person's like, dear God, I can't wait to do all that.
Like my wife. My wife is very social, so like Caitlin not being able to go and see her people and things like that, like. We're all just wired differently. So.
Yeah, everybody's a little bit different. What would be, let's say, the hardest thing for you about quarantine that maybe you had to deal with, and maybe your best takeaway during this time? What the one positive, one negative?
Well, I'd say the first thing is the quarantine 15. Has
it's
absolutely
a real thing.
Me. Not being busy.
Some would call it the quarantine 25 or whatever.
And honestly, I actually have been more busy with the quarantine because of what we do for like our clients and things like that. They're all online. A lot of it's online or business development. But yeah, like I definitely hit numbers I've never hit before on the scale. So I'm on the decline right now.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, listen, we're going to backtrack, but tell everybody, this is a general introduction of who you are, maybe your little elevator speech of who you are, what you do currently, and then we're going to backtrack and talk about how you got to where you are.
Where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've been at the church for 15 years, and I own a company, and I've got a partner. He's a Silicon Valley technology, now a lawyer, former software developer, and so we have like marketing software. We do business development, and we help companies grow, and we help them clean up their online presence, and then increase revenue, things like that.
And just right out of the gate, because we're going to jump right back to how it all started for you. Did you ever think you'd be doing what you're doing? Did you see yourself in the position you're in? I'm sure at some point, as God swears into your life, you start getting new vision for your life. But we go all the way back to the beginning and your upbringing. I mean, is this something you thought you could see yourself doing?
In the beginning, honestly, all I knew is that growth. Like, I think for me, growing things has always been a really, really important thing to me. And so, no, but what's crazy is like, even as like the Holy Spirit has led me to do things, it all at the time didn't make sense. Like, there was a time that I was going to meet with a government, because I worked with, I used to do like insurance for local governments and hospitals and auto dealers. And I was driving to this government, and God spoke to me and was like, he basically was just like, this season is coming to an end. I want you to go and do this today. And so it was like a company that he wanted me to go talk to. The owners are family friends of mine. And at the time, like, we talk a little bit about being led by the Spirit and how crucial it is. But for me, like where I'm at today now, like seeing how we really do have to trust God to open up doors and to obey when he tells us to go places. Everything that I'm doing now today makes 100% sense. And then even things that God is stirring up, my wife and I, Caitlin and I, for doing for the kingdom that we've always wanted to do for the last 10 or 11 years since we've been married. Everything that I'm doing right now is like paving the pathway for us to be able to do those things.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's very cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about your upbringing, your environment as a child. I mean, and the reason we go there, for anybody watching, everybody has some childhood, everybody has some degree of it, and we like to, as humans, to deem what's fair and unfair, and this was fair that I was born into this, or not fair that I was born into that, or whatever it is. But the reality is, that's not the point, and that's not the question to be asking. But our upbringing and the environment we are born into and the family we're raised in, it begins to shape our mentality. We know that God can use all that together for good, and sometimes it can lead to paths of destruction. I mean, we get it, but it matters to who we are and who we've become. So talk to us a little bit about your family life growing up, the environment you grew up in as a young boy.
Okay, so we talked a little bit last night about this, just kind of a precursor of some of the things we were going to talk about today. And so for me, before I go into this, I called both of my parents last night because I just wanted to kind of talk to them a little bit. But, all over the world, people are born into lives they don't choose. All over the world, people are born into lives they don't choose. We're born into America, the greatest, country in the world with the most freedom in the world, the greatest history in time. And so think about people that are born into the dust in Africa. And I read today in Psalms that it says that he raises up the poor from the dust. So we're born into these lives that we don't choose, and that's where the message of Jesus is so incredible, is that we're born, like it says in John 1, not according to the will of man or flesh and blood, but of God. So it means the fact that our parents came together to make us is no longer, what we're born as. And then even if somebody planned to have us as their child, it says born not according to the will of man or flesh and blood, but of God. So with that said, that word born means extension. So we transition out of the life that we're born into, good or bad, and God gives us a totally different life. And so my life that I was born into, my mom had my sister, her first child, when she was 17 years old, and then had my brother, and was 24 when she had me with her second husband, who was my dad. And then she was just born into a crazy amount of difficulty. Same thing for my dad, just born into an insane insanely difficult background. And so by the time I came along, by the time I was born, I had two half siblings, half siblings, and they were both just literally just scrapping to kind of get out of the life that they were born into.
Yeah.
And for anyone watching that, maybe you resent your parents, don't resent your parents at all, because most people, they're just trying to further how far they can get out of what they were born into themselves.
They only know what they know and don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, so that's like human nature, is everyone's just trying to make it a little bit better. And so, but then if you are born into difficulty, right, and you resent people that are born into good lives, you can't do that, because you are wanting to build a life for your own children where they're born into good lives. And then do you think it's going to be fair for other people to resent them because of what you did to set them up to win? You can't do that. So my mom and my dad got divorced when I was just a little kid. I mean, they were 24 and 23, and I was 15 months old. So my mom remarried into, without getting into, it's just a really difficult relationship. And I had a step sibling, and then they got divorced. My dad remarried, and didn't work out. And then, they both had difficult marriages. But I ended up through time, and I'm so thankful for this. But I've had 15 siblings. And 12 of those siblings are step, and 3 of those are half siblings. And so, my parents today are...
We would say that's not a traditional family.
Not a traditional family. Not a traditional family. But the truth is, I was talking to my mom last night because I'm just so proud of her. Like, she has had to be so scrappy and started her life off fleeing California to move here from an abusive dad who died as a heroin addict at a young age, and got pregnant when she was 17 in high school, and has just been scrapping ever since, that point in her life. But she really did give us a life so much better, because of how hard she worked. She put herself through Career Point Business School to become a secretary.
Yeah.
And
so did you grow up with your mom, or did you grow up with your dad?
Back and forth,
Both.
Every other. Sometimes I live with my mom. Sometimes I live with my dad. As a kid, you leverage that stuff unfairly to them. Every other weekend, you're either at one parent's house or the other. But the truth is growing up in these environments, I am so thankful for them, because I have a ton of empathy. I know what it's like to grow up on free lunches. There's probably a lot of people watching that are like, "Oh, my kids are on free lunches," or I grew up on free lunches, and so. I just have so much empathy for people, and I really believe in what God can do in somebody's life because of that. And so when I came to the church, fast forward through all of that, just different marriages, them growing up. I mean, I have a 5-year-old, and I'm 34 years old, and my dad had a 7-year-old at 20 that was like a stepdaughter at 23, which is insane, right? Mm-hmm. So fast forward all that, my mom is gone during the day, so we have a lot of freedom in that house at summertime before she gets home. So the first time I smoked a cigarette, I think I was like 12, And
did you cough?
Man, I don't know. Probably. I probably did. It was after a snowball fight.
Some people, the first time they smoke a cigarette or take a drink, or it's just like, oh, it felt very natural.
It was after a snowball fight in the field. You know what I mean? And so I just started getting into things, man. Like a lot of kids from single parent, maybe like blue collar homes or like clerical work type homes. You started getting access.
You had a lot of freedom, which became pretty dangerous, I'm sure.
Totally. You learn how to fight because there are kids that are you're having fights in your backyard or whatever, or neighborhoods because there's no parents during the summertime at home. But I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for my childhood and growing up in that. And then, I ran around with, I actually, for Broken Arrow, I'm not from Bixby.
Oh.
I ended up going to Bixby, kind of right at the end. I even lived in Broken Arrow the majority of the time I was going to Bixby. I was driving. I was trying to I just knew, I just got in trouble all the time. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was of my brother and my sister, I was the kid that was like the problem child a little bit. So by the time I came to the church.
Why do you think that was? I mean, we could say, well, it's my personality or it's these things, but was it a fight for attention? Was it the brokenness of a family lifestyle? Were you fighting for the attention because there were so many step siblings and half siblings, and, or where do you think, or you just didn't know any better?
I just think you're a product of the environment that you come up in, and you got parents that are doing the best that they can. My dad really started. I started going with my dad to church every other weekend, maybe like in the middle school realm. But by then, I think most people are just a product of their environment. I think that's why I have to be very, very, very merciful to people.
Yeah.
Even the way my life was changed with this church, like if Pastor Bill and Sandy don't start this church, and I never intersect with them through the nightmare in middle school, and then I never intersect with Hitman in high school with Sean Schaefer, it's now my brother-in-law, where would I be?
Right.
So what ends up happening is, I'm like, it sounds so stupid, but like I dip and smoke. I have easy access to pot, so I'm getting high.
Not currently. This is when you were little.
This is a long time ago. Haven't
gotten clarify high. That statement.
Haven't gotten high in a really long time.
Just to clarify, we're still in the early years.
My brother's very, very tough guy. He's in prison now, and he's just a very, very tough guy.
So you grew up in an environment that was kind of every man for himself, fight for what you can get.
Yeah.
Obviously that because of the young parent figures, and just they weren't necessarily devoted to God wholeheartedly. So there's just an environment where there's a lot of liberty, a lot of free time. You're getting into trouble with other kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that. And so then we kind of take that obviously into these high school years, these teenage years, which are hard for teenagers in the best home environments. So I know you're into sports. Let's talk about just that arena. I mean, obviously, I'm sure we continue to go down a darker path here.
Okay, so I did 8th grade twice.
Because you liked it so much?
Because I liked it so much. Actually, because I was just getting in so much trouble. They're like, let's hold him back before he goes to his freshman year. And I'm in Broken Arrow. And so they hold me back. And they're like...
So you didn't go to Bixby till high school?
No, I didn't go to Bixby till high school. So I'm in Broken Arrow. Well, my mom, she ended up marrying this guy. He ended up becoming my stepdad. Amazing guy. It was super kind to me, and had a big impact on me. But somebody gave him tickets to the Nightmare. So like their first date was my brother, my mom, my sister, and this guy, and we went to the Nightmare. So I went to the Nightmare, and it was the first time in my life that I actually remember confessing Jesus Christ as Lord of my life.
Would this be the 8th grade year? You said you were held back twice.
The second. It was the first. This was the first 8th grade year.
Okay.
But what ended up happening is, so that night, like we went out trick or treating with friends. A dog bark, and I like hit the deck because I thought that it was like a gunshot because there were like gunshots in the Nightmare. I was just like so spooked. But I started in that season of my life I knew everything I was doing. I knew it was wrong, but I started asking God for forgiveness every time. So I'd do something terrible, and I would feel so convicted about it, and I would be like, okay, God, please forgive me.
That's really interesting. I want to camp there just for a second, and we'll pick up right where you're at. But it's interesting that moment, even in 8th grade, people talk about why the Nightmare, why are you trying to scare people, what are the salvations real, or all that. Listen, at the end of the day, the gospel is the ministry, the good news of Jesus, and a lot of the particularly the Nightmare. The purpose of the Nightmare is to showcase life without God, and it was so visual and vivid, and that it caught your attention, that at least made you aware. And I think a lot of people, believers, you might be watching and listening to this. Maybe you're new, and you're looking for discipleship, and you're maybe even feeling convicted, like you're not doing what you know you should be doing or where you're at. But if just that sensitivity to the Holy Spirit is where it starts. It's like, at least I'm aware that I'm not fully devoted yet. I'm not fully committed. I don't even know how to read the Bible. I don't have a church. I'm not, maybe even fully giving your life to Jesus yet, but I'm aware. And I think just that sensitivity, it's worth celebrating. Sometimes we focus, I'm guilty of this in my life today, but as a whole, as a believer, we're so focused on things we're not doing right that even in this moment, man, we can at least celebrate the fact you're at least looking for forgiveness. You're at least aware that you're doing wrong. Yeah. And that's I just want to encourage somebody at this moment that could be feeling that way. It's just like, I'm not where I want to be. It's like, hey, we're moving. Because here we are. If we jump ahead 20 years, here we are today talking. So let's go back. You're in 8th grade. You come to the Nightmare. Yeah, so it's caught your attention. At least you're aware.
Think about this. Like, whoever it was that prayed with me, all 500 of those people all working their tails off, just for that moment, for that salvation moment. What happened is in that moment, this is what Jesus does. He connects us to God. Jesus connects us to God. And that's why Paul said, I came, Apollos watered, God provided the increase. Well, a lot of us, if you are somebody right now that feels like you have been connected to God, somebody's prayed with you, but you're still trying to figure it out, you just keep going. Because as long as you're trying to move forward, God will start placing people in front of your path, different things like that.
Yeah, it's good.
But
you're connected.
Yeah, so I got connected to God, and what happened was for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for the next 6 years, I couldn't shake this. Everything that I was doing, I knew was wrong. I asked God for forgiveness all the time. And then on top of all of that, I started to realize how doomed I was.
So all throughout high school, early college year, up through maybe.
Yeah, the whole time I was in college. Then I go to high school, and I wasn't kind to people. I was mean, and it was probably because I was insecure. And you get into high school, and everything is about. The only thing I was a good athlete. But then high school also becomes about cars and clothes, all these different things. And so I was so insecure the whole time. And looking back, and I was just terrified.
It's such human nature, though. It's to naturally compare ourselves, especially in those years. It's so pivotal. You start comparing your upbringing to other kids, and they got money, and you don't have money, and then we're mad at ourselves because now you're not doing what you should be doing.
Right.
So you're mad at yourself, and you're taking out other people, and there's so many elements involved here. And then you don't even know really how to process as a teenager. So you're mean, you're fighting, you're breaking rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So I continued doing stupid stuff, and I just wasn't a good person. I didn't even like myself, And then Sean Schaefer, you guys were doing the Hitman program, and actually a receiver from TU, he was the first one to come out. And then I think Sean Schaefer and Chris Hart came out, and I remember they're huge. They both had ton of chin hair. Remember that?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I got a T-shirt for catching a slant as a receiver and hitting a safety, And so I finished out my high school years. I knew I was still in trouble, and God really I would do something insanely stupid, and God would just kind of protect me and kind of bring me back enough, So at this point, I'm doing terrible in school. I am addicted to smoking and dipping, you know what I mean? And trying to figure out how to get out of it. And honestly, my mind was a mess. I was full of fear all the time. I was angry all the time. I was like that guy at that point in my life. So I go to college, and it all just continues. I ended up getting to the point where I'm failing most of my class anyway, and I'm still getting high occasionally, and same thing, no discipline. But something happened. I drove my truck into a pole, so then I had no car, and then I had to stay. Everyone went home for winter break, and I stayed to work because I didn't have any money, and I had a truck that was destroyed, and that was it. That was the moment I knew I was doomed. And I knew that the only way that anything in my life was going to get better. I started thinking about having a family someday, and thinking I wouldn't even know how to have a healthy relationship to where I could guarantee that whoever I'm with, that relationship would continue. And I just pictured myself pushing a broom, because this is what I did in the summers. I was a temp worker. So I just pictured myself at the steel factory that I worked at, just pushing a broom in a steel factory for 12 hours a day, And so I started trying to read my Bible by myself. I was staying with a friend who's in a trailer park outside of the school that I played football at. And, man, so I tried to read my Bible. And I tried to read Genesis, and it was terrible. I couldn't understand any of it, and it was all really, really difficult. And I was like, man, this is brutal. So I ended up, quitting by the end of the year football. My grades were terrible anyway, and I was going to move back home. And then I remembered Nightmare, and then I remembered Hitman. So I thought, you know what? I'm gonna start going to church, and hopefully, I'm screwed anyway. No matter what I do, by the time I came to the church, I was pushing a broom in a lumber yard as a temp worker, hoping to get hired full time, to drive a forklift in a lumber yard. And that's when I came to our church, and I remember walking in and just thinking for the first time in a really long time, just having hope.
Yeah, that's cool.
So And then the very first time I came, I bumped into Sean Schaefer, the guy who gave me.
So you just came by yourself. You just showed up.
I just showed up.
Before we go from there, it's a couple of angles I just want to highlight for people. I mean, number one, as a member of this church and a member of any church that you could be part of or watching or just the ministry, everything matters. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't know the seed you're sowing. That nightmare season, and to the person who played a character that you never even knew, their investment eventually led to you coming and walking through these church doors at a point of desperation. Just that willingness for those two guys to go and throw a T-shirt out to somebody at a football team years later opened the opportunity for you to come walk in these doors. God used that to remind you. And so never discount the investment you're making. Never discount it feels like, I'm just going to give out a T-shirt, or I play this part of the nightmare, or I just do cheeseburgers at the nightmare. Whatever it is, it all is seed being sown into people's lives, and whether they respond immediately to a miraculous life turnaround, or if it's years later, it's like, man, I remember this church that did this. I'll go there. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's so significant, and I want to encourage people to don't discount the investments you're making in people's lives. Don't discount your effort being involved, because it may not produce immediately, but it will produce. Yeah. And that's exactly why you came walking these doors thinking, okay, reading the Bible's hard and boring. I don't even know where to start with this deal. I started at the beginning and it doesn't make sense. Right. And so I'm just going to go to a place of people that are going the way that I think I want to go. Mm-hmm. And you walk in and you see Sean.
Yeah, so I walk in and see Sean, and at this point I'm just really hungry. I can see that it's all real, and I can see that it matters. And so I just started showing up to everything, and then things just started falling off. In the beginning, actually, I had friends that went with me. I had a friend that God performed a miracle in his life, and so then I had some friends coming with me, and eventually they stopped coming. And then eventually, I kind of became annoying to him and a little bit irrelevant, because I was like, this is real, and
your heart's changing.
Yeah, and so then it was kind of like this purge to where, like, to get to where I needed to go, I kind of needed to completely start over. So, man, I just kind of went all in on the church, and I began to really feed off the word. And then I got promoted at this lumberyard that I was driving a forklift at, and there was like this rough guy who was amazing, he's like out of prison, also driving a forklift with me, but started like reading. We started reading our Bibles together every day. And I just started consuming the word like crazy. I started reading every book I could get my hands on, and I was really, really hungry. So eventually, I went on to do the internship, and really, really painful year, obviously.
When was the point when you said, I'm all in? Like you came to the church. We kind of discussed how you found the church because of investments made earlier. Mm-hmm. But and okay, I don't want to go this direction with my life. So I want to go better ways. But it wasn't. What was the point when you said, okay, Jesus, you're real. You're the Lord of my life. I'm submitting to you. I'm not just looking for a better life program. I'm not just looking for a behavioral modification program. Mm-hmm. I know my life's going this way, which I don't want. I want to get around people going the right way. But what was the moment when you're like, and you can recall where you gave your life to the Lord? Was that at a service here? Was that?
Honestly, from the very first day I walked in, I knew I was all in.
It's interesting because you kind of had that prodigal son moment, right? This pig pen moment where you're like, okay, I'm doomed here, right? This guy's in the pig pen. He's starving. He can't even eat the slop or whatever, you know. And he's just thinking, my God, I could at least be a servant. Like, that's better than this. Yeah. And you're thinking, I'm not going to live in this pig pen the rest of my life. Yeah. And so you start walking home, and you're just like, yeah, I'm in. Yeah,
it was really easy because I saw all of these people that were just further out in front of me that I could emulate. And I thought, okay, this is really easy. These people are already where I want to go. I see guys with families. I see guys with companies. Then I did the internship. And
that's so good, though. What you're saying right there is so good, because it wasn't, you didn't know how to read the Bible. I didn't know. I just went to a community of people, a church that I felt comfortable going to. Mm-hmm. And I saw people that were in front of me that thought, oh gosh, I can do that. You saw people living it. You saw people that were part of it, and it was an environment you wanted to be in. And you just thought, I can do that, and you just stuck around.
Yeah.
I mean, you put yourself. I don't want to belittle that. You put yourself in the environment. You were intentional, but you just thought you were inspired by it. Thought I can go that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's-
And you
that's
were
pretty
one of
cool.
those people.
Yeah.
You,
Well, thank you.
Sean,
Yeah.
Hart. And, obviously the thing about when you come into a situation like this place is there are a lot of things though that like you really have to be willing. And this goes back to something we talked about earlier. If God created us, he's the only one who knows why he created us. And if God created us, he's the only one who knows how to speak to us in our own language to begin to unlock who he created us to be. He knows us better than our spouses, anyone in the world. And so, but the truth is we have to like start to lay down things. Like even now, like 15 years later, I have a good life. I have an amazing family, and I have a company that I love. And if I start to put identity in that, still it'll like stop up the things that God's wanting to do. So people that come into this place or any place where God wants to take them to a house to change their lives, you have to you have to give it all up so that God can begin to open doors, to begin to help you become who he created you to be. And the thing is like when we get to this place, and if we commit to continually staying in this place, he'll open up door after door after door, getting you to what he created you to get to. And then he will use person after person after person and situation after situation to help us become the people that we were created to be. For example, we've all been in situations where we have been treated poorly. You know what I mean? Maybe it's our race. Maybe it's what we're born into. Maybe at the time we don't have much value, but God knows 20 years from now we are going to have value. Well, because of things that happened to me ever since I was a kid, like the way I communicate to people, I just always wanted to be very kind.
Yeah.
You know,
You always want to err on the side of mercy, which you mentioned earlier.
I never want to be the oppressor.
Really cool. Yeah.
I never want to not be mindful of the dreams and hopes and desires that is on the inside of someone.
Yeah.
You know,
To your point, too, I want to really emphasize I love to always talk about the nature and character of God. I always want people to see the truth of who he is. And it's so important to understand that God picked you. He picked you watching this or listening to this. And he didn't pick the environment you were born into. He didn't pick sin. He picked Adam and Eve, put them in a garden, and then they broke it. Right? He didn't pick that for them. He picked them and put them in this beautiful garden. They broke it. And so he didn't pick the situation that you might have been born into. But to what you just said a while ago, we see God's patience and faithfulness. He keeps bringing people across your path. He keeps speaking your language. He's going to get to you because he picked you. And God picked you because he wants to give you all of who he is, and he's patient and faithful that even though other people broke the system, even though your mom and dad, maybe weren't the godliest theologian people.
they did but they did the best they could.
They did. And even the worst of the worst parents, no matter what your upbringing could be, God still picked you, and he's still going to get to your heart, and he's still going to get you what he's always wanted for you. Mm-hmm. A verse that we know so well, Jeremiah 29:11, because I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, to give you a future and hope. Verse 10 says you're going to be in exile for 70 years, but I'm going to bring you home because I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, to give you a future and a hope. And it's so important to understand that whatever exile you could be experiencing or living in, God's going to bring you home because he's always known the plans he has for you. Mm-hmm. He's not making up new plans for Harold based on what Harold was born into. God's only wanting to get to Harold, or he's only wanting to get to you. He's only wanting to get to me what he's always wanted for you and me. And so when he picked you, he wants to give you him.
Yeah.
And so he's patient and he's faithful, bringing people across your path, bringing Sean Schaefer, bringing Chris Hart, bringing the nightmare person to pray with you, bringing, even your dad bringing you to church periodically as a teenager.
Big deal.
Big
deal.
There's so many things, and God just speaking to your heart, bringing the prison forklift guy. I mean, there's so many things that God's just patiently drawing you because he's wanting to get to you what he's always had for you. And so here you are now. You've given your life to Christ. You're going the right direction. Things are progressing. If you're joining us or you're watching and you maybe don't know to go to Guts Church, we have an internship program here at the church. Mm-hmm. That's a 1-year commitment. And it really just, in the easiest format to say, it just puts the squeeze on you and you find out what's really on the inside of you. It forges some toughness, for the gospel, for the kingdom, which is really the way we're supposed to be as believers and Christians. But so we have that program here, and Harold's been at the church now for a year or so at this point. And what was the appeal to the internship program? Why the internship? I mean, you're hungry, but how did that fit in? Why did you do that? And what was your biggest takeaway from that year?
Well, first of all, everybody that I wanted to be like had done it. Like everybody I respected had done it. You had done it. Sean had done it. And so for me, it was just like, I mean, even back then to get in, like it was hard to get in. And I didn't know if I was going to get in. You know what I mean? They had questions on there that you had to answer that if you had done stuff in the last year, you couldn't be in it. And like a lot of those disqualified me. So, but I just knew what it was, an opportunity to just be a servant. You know, you give up your own identity and to be a sponge. It was a tough year. I think I tried to fight every other guy in that class but one at some point. And which just makes me sound like that guy, and I really was. I mean, we're talking like 2006.
Well, and again, part of the design of that program and part of the nature and culture of this environment is we want to find out what's on the inside of people, and that year is a challenging year, so emotions start surfacing. So, and it's not just your flaws; they have emotions and things. So there's natural combatant elements that can surface, but you navigated them. Yeah, you came through them.
Well, and something incredible happened to me. So I left driving a forklift in a lumberyard to waiting tables at Logan's Roadhouse.
Shout out to Logan's.
Yeah, anybody who likes the rolls. I was really good at getting those rolls on the table. And I started tithing, and I started attaching my finances to the kingdom. And so during the internship, it was the craziest year because people I hadn't even met would walk up to me. You know, and there's like a tuition. It covers your housing, covers like your gas that you need, gas cards, food, all these different things. And so like it costs money to be in the internship. So you're trying to like do this full-time deal and then work on the weekends. And so I started attaching, you know, you might make $100 in a night, and I would be like, okay, $10, you know. So I'd give out $10. And it was really easy because I would just take that cash and I'd be at church pretty soon after at some point, and I'd just put that money back. So that year was so crazy because people I'd never met would walk up to me and be like, hey, I know you don't know me, but God spoke to me and told me to give this to you. And they would like give me $500. One lady drove up here and said she was driving on the road and God spoke to her. She came in, didn't go to church here, and put $1,500 in to cover 3 months of my internship program.
Wow.
My entire year was like that.
Wow.
So completely changed my perspective on money and God as a provider. And because I didn't have anything when I came in here, real easy for me to give 10% because I had nothing. You know what I mean? I was like
10% of nothing is nothing.
Can't hear you.
Hold on, he's moving on.
He's moving on. But so I mean, when I came in, I had like baseball caps, T-shirts, mesh shorts, jeans, a pair of flip flops, and a pair of shoes. You know, and I was driving my mom's car whenever she wasn't working to come to stuff. So yeah, like the internship though, incredible year, and really what's great about it is it gives you a lot of self-awareness.
Yes.
Most people don't have naturally a ton of like stare you in the eye self-awareness of things that you need to work on or wrong thinking to be fixed because you don't have a ton of people around you that are trying to like help you get better. So this internship, that's all it is. It's that 24/7, and that self-awareness allows you to become somebody you could have never been because you're having to deal with your own issues.
Yeah, okay. So good. I want to know the craziest thing, the best memory you had from the internship. And when I mean best, I mean craziest. And run it through your filter because I know you guys are probably in the top 2 of the weirdest people in your individual class. Okay. So filter it, but give us the juice. Give us some good stuff, you know.
I'll give you 2.
And Jeremy, maybe share your third most and not your first most, because I don't know that that's for public ears.
Well, first of all, it's the first time I ever like really like. Well, I got humbled before, but I got really humbled one time. We used to have this like guy who was a pretty like locally famous hockey player, and he was leading a meeting, and he started chirping, and I was a punk back then, and so he starts chirping and whatnot, and then I finally just popped up, and I was like, man, you know what? Like, if you chirp at me one more time, we're gonna go to you're gonna take it to the next level, and I promise you don't take it to the next level. So he pops up, and he's like, let's go outside. So we both pop up. We're walking outside like we're gonna throw down. And we walk all the way downstairs. We act like we're going to get in the back parking lot. Nobody knows this is happening. You know what I mean? Nobody can stop it. And right before we walked out there, I started to do the math. I'm like, you know what? I bet he benches like 100 pounds more than me.
This is where math really
If he
kicks in.
connects, so I look at him right before we got outside. I'm like, all right, man, you're good. You know, I'll drop it. My bad.
That was a good move. That was a good move.
This is a smart move. The other one is, the nightmare was really, really great because back then interns were given rooms to run for rooms in the nightmare. So I was given the ministry tent with, I think, Mariah Fange. And we just had a record night, you know. So you're like learning, you're working full time to win people to the Lord, but then you become really, really good at, in 10, 15 seconds or less, winning somebody to the Lord. You know what I mean? I think that's probably the strength of our church. So out of everything in the internship, I just thought, man, that was a really incredible, wonderful, foundational, magical season for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, it's a remarkable year, and I would be remiss not to say that we're starting to recruit for the internship for the summer class.
No. Yeah, you
program.
can tell your story. Which one's
and
yours?
and there's so many exciting
Hey,
things.
we have the power, and we'll cut you off. We'll turn your mic off, man.
Well, listen, I mean, my wife, it was not my wife at the time. She wrecked Pastor Bill's truck. I think that's noble and worth noting.
And who's your wife?
Pastor Bill, Nina Renee Bedell, Palacios, Texas.
Would you like to show a picture
Yeah.
of her so everybody knows?
I don't think I have any pictures of her.
Do you have that? Do you have that picture of her when she's like 7 years old? That's the
I do
best
have
picture.
that.
With the
I have
bangs.
those. Yeah, I have those.
It's the best picture.
We had a lot of fun. There was one time I got sent home, and I went back to her apartment and just swam in the pool and thought, this is great. I don't mind getting kicked out, but it didn't go well. I actually left at one point. I said, either you want me or don't. And then I got on the front porch and I thought I had a wise saying that dropped in my heart from an elder here at the church at the time, and I literally turned right back around the front porch and went back in and go, hey, I was wrong about what I just said a while ago, if I could stay. So I was on the verge of being kicked out pretty regularly. We had one time Pastor Bill lost his dog, and the whole intern class was running around the streets of around the church, just hollering out the window for Harley dog, Harley, looking for the dog. So a lot of fun memories like that. But it's a life changing program. We're telling some silly stories, but it's a lifetime. There it is. That's a glamour shot. Wow,
That's a great picture.
Wow, you might put that in front of the camera. That's worth noting right there.
I feel like the world needs to see this.
Yeah, get ready to screenshot right now. Get ready to screenshot your phone. Oh yeah, that is solid. That's my woman right there. That's my glamour woman. We met in the internship. And speaking of which, as you're an intern, you're growing, you've given your life to God, you're building new friendships.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, there's still things in your life that are coming out, and we're flushing out the stuff. But you met your wife during this year. She was not currently an intern at the time, or she was not an intern.
I met her right, like we fell hard for each other right before the internship.
So you had to go the whole year, because in the internship, as young people, there's no dating. It's a 1-year commitment,
Yeah.
so you can't date her. But you guys really like each other. But now it's just 1 year of, so much for that.
Really hard, and I was like in no position to date, and just because I was coming out of a season where it's like trying to like get healthy, and so they're like, hey, don't go to the same place as her, like just get focused on your own personal growth, and at the end of the year, if it's legitimate, it'll be there. So we did. We waited a whole year, and we saw each other a couple times, being at places through mutual friends. But for the most part, we really abided by that. I was even like super hardcore sometimes, where she'd like give me letters, and I'd be like, I'm not gonna read that, which is it just sounds funny, but I really wanted to get better. But yeah, so we went on a date the night before the internship started. And then a year later, the night the internship ended, we went on our second date. So,
and now you've been married for 10 years.
Now we've been married for 10 years, and
that's pretty remarkable.
Still the biggest win of my life,
which
is the wife I have, the person I married.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
I want to make sure you got that out, because that's very worth saying and noting. And what I wanted to comment on is that we go back to the big picture here, because a lot of times we don't know the details and what's the next step. But you put yourself in the right environment. Mm-hmm. You submitted yourself to a 1-year training program that was in some points and sometimes uncomfortable, maybe unfair, mm-hmm. To develop you, to challenge you. You embraced it. You made a self-sacrifice, and because you put yourself in the right environment, you come out God begins to bestow upon you
Right.
the great things that God has always had for you, which I
Right.
circle back to my point, the things that God's always been wanting to get to you, right? You didn't grow up in a normal family situation,
Yeah.
but God was changing your heart, changing you, brought a godly woman in your life who did grow up in a more healthy, traditional church environment, grew up in a safe
Amazing
place.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even imagine marrying into her family. I couldn't imagine getting to be
It was
with
probably
her.
quite foreign with you seeing that as you guys are dating. You're just thinking, my God, this is...
Well, it was just different because, yeah, I mean, like, I wouldn't even allow myself to think about really being with her or marrying into her family or anything else because it was almost like too. It was
seemed
like
too distant, too far.
it was too fragile, and it was like, yeah, it was just so.
Would you? I wanted. I don't mean to put words in your mouth. Would you say it's maybe you didn't trust yourself, or it didn't seem realistic for something you could have, or expound on that?
It's probably like anybody, my parents, both amazing people, working their tails off, doing everything they can. But you also you guard yourself. You guard yourself from pain. To this day, if I can shut pain off like that. I'm thankful for that.
Sure.
But so yeah, it's like almost like the things that you really, really want, like the deepest, truest desires of your heart, things that you've always wanted to have. Man, like for me, I'm mindful of those things. I'm honoring those things, and that's how it was for me at the time. It was like I just got to get through this, head down, And the truth is, if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
you guys date for maybe a year or more after the internship?
I think year and a
Start
half,
dating?
and then we got engaged after a year and a half. The first time I went to see Scott Houston just to talk to him, I think he thought I was going to ask to.
Which, in case you don't know, Scott Houston's an elder here at the church.
Yeah. So the first time
he's super, super mean too.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
scary
Yeah.
individual.
the best
right?
man in the world. But the first time I went just to have coffee with him, because Pastor Bill came to me and was like, "Don't talk to Caitlin again until we talk." And then he was like, "You need to take Scott out. You need to be like, what do I need to do?" So anyway, we go to coffee with Scott, and he's like, "Hey, just so you know, you're not in yet." And I was like, I didn't think I was in. I feel like I'm far away.
Well, if Scott's saying that, you're definitely not in.
At the time, I wasn't.
Because that is the nicest human on the face of the earth right there.
The
But he's still a dad. He's still a dad.
Yeah, he was amazing though when I actually did ask. But then here's what happened. To marry the girl I married, I had to really prove myself, And the truth is, I'm like, she's like this person everybody's looking at the church, incredible, just incredible future giftings. It's all evident. So I kind of had to go through the entire church, get the approval of this entire community to be with this person, and it was a great demand because I graduate the internship. And this is where things just get insane for me. A couple others at the church. At this time, I'm mowing a guy's yard, and I'm mowing this guy's massive lawn property. That's my job. I make a couple $100 a week, and I start talking to God. I'm like, okay, it's time for me to go to the next level. I see all these business guys in the church, and I couldn't even wrap my mind. How did these guys even get there? It's just so overwhelming. So I start talking to God. Okay, God. I'm in your word, I'm worshiping you all day long, and those two things are the most valuable thing that we can do. We can just worship God and for everything. And so I asked God, I need the next season. So these guys end up coming to me and asking me to work for this startup company in the construction industry, and ended up being a massive jump in my life. And I'll tell you why. These guys, both elders at the church, they would sit me in their office, because I was still dealing with my issues. The internship doesn't get you through all your issues. It's the beginning of getting through.
It helps you expose them.
Yeah, and you either keep continuing that, or you shut it down. You stop. You stop putting yourself in that environment because it's so painful. But anyway, so I go to work for these guys. In the beginning, they're bringing me in the office, sit me down, and they're like, "Hey, you have a victim mentality. You're naturally aggressive with people. The way you deal with customers is very unprofessional, and you make excuses." I had to learn how to dress. So I'm sitting in these guys' office, bawling my eyes out, and realizing that this whole growth thing is just getting started. Changed my life. What these guys did changed my life, because they gave me a skill set. They taught me how to sell. I ended up getting the University of Tulsa's remodel for this granite company right before a build out, and I got Quick Trip's housing building division as a client. And then the other guy that was there got like a bunch of, long story short, we ended up becoming the 4th fastest growing company in the country in the construction industry.
Yeah.
So to this day, that's one of the two.
But being in that environment with that honest leadership forged you, changed you, shaped you. And I wish I could quote it right now. I cannot think of the reference, cannot think of the exact verbiage. I know it's a proverb, it's in Proverbs, but it just simply says an honest statement or from a friend or from an enemy is better than a
open
kind
rebuke.
word. Open rebuke
is better than hidden love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah. So
see, that's what happens when you read the word right there. I just knew about it. He knew it, but that's exactly right. But that's what that was. It's just honest. And so I think so many times we're offended by that when people, you had to trust that their intentions for you were good, not just for business, but for you as a person. They were friends with your girlfriend's dad, and so they're looking out for you. They're challenging you. So you had to trust their heart.
Yeah.
But you have to receive the open rebuke, and a lot of people would take offense to that. Tears or no tears would take offense to that and say, "I'm out of it. I don't want this."
And I craved it.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
and that's good. I want to give you a little bit of credit here in this moment too, because your story shows some tenacity, and not everybody's built the same or wired the same. But to your credit, it's in your wiring, that competitive element, that tenacity.
Yeah.
But even the pursuit of your wife, we joke about this because at your dinner reception, I spoke up, but nobody was really giving you enough of a shot, and so here you are.
People were like, when you first started dating, I was adamantly against it.
Yeah, and so everybody was. That was everybody's story in the moment. It's like when you guys started dating, I thought, no way this is going to work. No way this is going to work.
Right.
And I just remember standing up just to say, hey, good job for doubting all the haters. You know what I mean? Like everybody was hating on but the point is, and I'm not. That's not about me, but about you. Of just. Man, constantly overcoming, constantly having a submissive heart. And this is, for you listening, this isn't just Harold, this is you and me and everybody else, that if we can position ourselves to be in this place of having a submissive heart, of being willing to receive correction, of putting ourselves in the right environments, of putting us around the right people, of changing the picture of the kind of woman we want, and then just being willing to grow, you've done those things, and to your credit, and that's also, and here's where God uses it for good. So we go back to your upbringing, your childhood, man. Some of that maybe to be able to shut off the pain, maybe that competitive element, that fighting element, has been able to be used for good in a good way as a grown up, and so now here you are, married with 2 children and an entrepreneur. Like let's just kind of finish where you're at today and going forward. I mean, how has all of this now? I kind of probably cut you off because you were going there, but that first job you had, really shaped your professionalism, shaped your community, challenged your mindset. I mean, everybody operates either that victim or victor mentality, and I think we can slip in and out of it a lot of times on different scenarios of our life. But let's just go to where you are today. Yeah. How has all of this shaped your life? What would you say?
Okay, so that company ended up becoming, like I said, the 4th fastest growing company in the country in the construction industry, which what I do today is like my company helps companies grow, and we perfect all the things that is necessary and get the systems going to like grow companies, things like that. Well, the Lord spoke to me in the middle of the night while I was working at that job and started speaking about China and countries all over the world, different things like that. Couldn't wrap my mind around it. Wasn't a mature enough Christian to really understand any of it. And then I saw a thing with Joyce Meyer where she said everything that she was doing today, she used to walk around her house with a piece of paper and read them out loud because God spoke the earth into existence, so we speak our future into existence because we're made in the image of God. So all the things that God had put on her heart, she started speaking into existence. So I started doing this with God. I went down to a computer and typed that out that morning.
A list of things that you...
I'm selling granite in Oklahoma City, sleeping on the floor of a hotel room because all the beds are taken, And so I'm serving in the church, working with our youth kids. Some of them are also from just really difficult homes. And I'm in there with a guy who runs an organization working with the underground church in the most dangerous countries in the world. And at that time, I was going to school at night. So I'm still trying to like finish school. And I'm working, we're doing this stuff. Traveling. And then this guy comes to me and he's like, hey, man, I've been thinking about bringing you on to help administrating everything we do all over the world. And, China, God has specifically spoken about China. And he's like, you're going to cut your teeth on China, And at the time they were working in Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Burma had opened up. And so I went from selling granite to getting to work all over the world, and I ended up finishing my school. I was traveling internationally at night, working for this organization, getting taught how to manage projects in the most dangerous countries and difficult countries in the world. Like, everything we did was impossible. And I got to learn from an incredible leader, directly underneath an incredible leader who had mercy and compassion for me. He taught me how to be administrative, and he taught me that there was nothing that you couldn't figure out. And during this time, everything we did was so difficult. I learned that what you do with God, the way we co-labor with God, is you take steps, and then God can take our action, and he can multiply it into things. And then once that happens, then you take more steps, and then God comes in and does it again. And I realized he showed me, this is how you do impossible things. This is how you do difficult things. And so changed my life. And I got to work with leaders of millions in Christian movements from three different movements internationally. And so I got to see how the gospel spreads and expands and grows. And at the end of that season, I got my degree I got my bachelor's in organizational leadership. I land in China, and I started learning Mandarin. And I land in China, and the Lord speaks to me. And he's like, this is your last trip for a while. We're doing 10 cities. We were working with Bible schools in 52 different cities. And so we're going to 10 different cities. And the whole trip was like the most bittersweet trip of my life, because God literally put on my heart, like company car, suit and tie gig. Like, he showed me exactly the next season of my life. And I got back and I resigned because I believe
Sure.
I hear from
An
God.
active obedience. Yeah.
And then that type of job came to me. See, the next thing you know, I'm working with. So I saw how God grows the kingdom. I saw how to manage projects, humanitarian aid, and difficult countries, things like that. But what I lacked still was a deeper understanding of what everyday people deal with and are going through. So this job that I took was a corporate suit and tie gig, company car gig, working with local governments all over the country, large auto dealers around the country, banks, hospitals, working with CEOs, city managers, mayors, and then sitting with 60 people a day, up to 60 people a day, hearing their stories, staying in a hotel for sometimes five nights a week. And just my perspective just went to a totally different level again. So now I've got to help build one of the fastest growing companies in America, according to Inc. magazine. I've got to, work all over the world. I started when I was 24 years old. And then here I am now, 27 years old, working with mayors and governments and getting to see everyday people. So my empathy, right?
Right.
You take what I was born into, the difficulty my mom and my dad both have had, and then you take just the progression, my perspective on people, and my empathy is just constantly growing. So I do that for 2.5 years. We have a little girl, and I'm driving down the road, and here it is again. Lord speaks to me. I'm driving to go meet with the local government, city of McAllister. And Lord speaks to me. And a guy in our church had started an RV dealership. Everybody knows who that is. And I had heard that they were projected to be the fastest growing RV dealership in the country because of what they were doing online. And the Lord spoke to me and said, I want you to go and talk to this guy who was a general manager at the time. And he said, I want you to talk to him about going to work for him. And I was like, I'm working a high-profile job that people want, suit and tie gig, at a young age. I'm 27, at a young age. And I'm like, I'm doing something way beyond my years. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Well, I kept driving further and further down the road. And it got to the point where I had to pull the car over and get out because I thought I was going to start throwing up. I'm serious.
Yeah, it was that real.
So I drove 2.5 hours because I'd gotten all the way, or an hour and a half back, met with that guy at 7:30 at night, quit that other job, which made no sense to anybody. And I went to work for that dealership for about a year, and I got to learn an amazing sales system. I got to see how sales guys were trained. And then I got to work with the second time in my life that I got to work with one of the fastest growing companies in their industry, in a totally different industry.
Yeah.
So now I've been a temp worker. I've worked all over the world. I've worked in the construction industry, working with builders that are difficult to work with. That's hard. Worked with governments, city managers. I've been blue collar. I've been the guy in the hotel room. And then now I'm on a lot with a degree. And at this time I'd gotten pretty salty in Mandarin, Chinese, wondering if I was ever going to go back, wondering how it's all going to happen. And I did it for right at a year and some change. And I got to learn how they were using advertising online to sell to 48 states. People from all over the country coming in and buying. We're doing we're like working with motorhomes are like $400,000.
Yeah.
So a lot of those clients are well traveled. Like it was a great deal for me. But at the end of that season, about a little over a year, Lord speaks to me again in the middle of the night. And this time he says, something is coming from China, and I want you to take it. So when God speaks to you, you don't tell a ton of people because you have no idea. Like, you got to, like, flesh it out. You have guys that you're covenant with. So I called 2 of my friends, and I said, man, I believe that something is coming from China. I believe the Lord spoke to me. But if nothing happens, great. But if something does happen, I told you beforehand. Well, 3 days later, I get a LinkedIn message from a young pastor that I worked with in Beijing. And he's like, man, can you come to China? And we start talking. He's doing a really cool deal. It's a startup. It's software. And software developers, people teaching Mandarin to people in America. So he's like, can you come? So I quit that job. And I went on a 2-week vacation. And then I flew to China and booked it for a couple weeks, knowing I could move the flight up, come back earlier. I get there. They take me to the hotel where like Kobe and LeBron stay. And I go up into this hotel room, walk in, and they take me to meet this guy. And he's this handsome, real trendy. Turns out he's like 46-year-old Chinese guy. And he and his wife. So we start talking. And, at this time my Mandarin had progressed even more. And he's like, where are you from? And I said Tulsa. And when I said Tulsa, he's taking a drink of his water. And he spits it out. And I was like, what? And they said in Chinese, they said, Ni shi jidu tu ma, which means like, are you a Christian? So I said, yes. And they're like, we're Christians, and we got saved by ORU and Rhema missionaries.
Nice.
So I'm like, my wife and my brother-in-laws graduated from ORU, and my pastor went to Rhema. And they're like, well, this is God. So I struck up a friendship with this guy, and we just did we're just testing out. It was a startup. He was investing in a company. So I kind of came in. He wanted to hire me full time, but I came in as a consultant. I came back. I stayed there for the 2 weeks, learned the entire company. They're using Chinese teachers to try and teach people in America English, trying to get in with schools, different things like that. So
it's pretty amazing. And as we kind of wrap this up, what I hear and what's so cool to encourage somebody is, you mentioned earlier about how God brings people across your path, and he speaks to you in your language, and so you telling your story like that was remarkable, because I think everybody can relate and going, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
What is the point of this?
Yeah.
Why am I selling this? Why am I over here? This is not what I like to do. Why am I quitting this job doing ministry? I'm responsible. I feel responsible for ministry. I want to do ministry. Why would I love China. I know the language. I know. So, and here are these and yet God kept putting you around people as he's preparing you for where you're at today. And of course, where are we going from today is in God's hands, but we can see how God just continually navigates. And that's the part where we zoom out. When we hear your story in that context like that, we can zoom out and we can see God's hand in things. But in the moments, man, it's frustrating, it's confusing, it's hard to figure out, it's hard to navigate, but we can zoom out and we go like, oh, I can see where God was preparing me for what I do today, to own my own company, to be a successful entrepreneur, to be able to navigate and have all these relationships, to understand governments, to understand international relationships. It's all been preparing you. And it's the same thing for whoever's listening or watching. Is you may not understand in the moment, but if you can zoom out one day and you can see how God's been preparing you and equipping you, not just for worldly success, but for effectiveness in the kingdom. All the way back from Sean Schaefer and Chris Hart showing up at football practice to some Chinese dude in a suit, where you cannot connect, and it's like, wow, God has been putting people in your path, and it comes back to our sensitivity and obedience to just being led by the Spirit. I put myself in this environment where people are going, God spoke to my heart, I obeyed. It's that simple obedience to be around the right people, to obey God when He speaks, and God has been developing and forging your life and building a beautiful life. Because on the surface, this is what we all want to aim at, right? I own my own business. I'm married. I have 2 kids. I'm involved in my church. And it's like, wow, that shouldn't have been necessarily on paper what you're born into. It shouldn't have been the direction you go. But because of that submission God has been getting you what He's always wanted to get you. And I would say beyond the things we see on the surface, I know you to know that there's the joy, the peace, and the healing that God's done in your own life too.
Well, think about
Final
this.
thought?
That guy ended up telling me. So that ended up opening up the door. Well, that guy ended up saying, he asked me to tell my story. So I told my story. Told him about working at the underground church in China, And he came back to me with, I'm 46 years old. I built a company, a software company, built it up. And, in the last few years, I sold that company for 10 billion yuan. So I'm sitting here with this guy. He's like a Chinese Christian billionaire, saved by people that are from our city. And we struck up a friendship. I went to China last September, and we got together, met for 3 hours. And but there is something that for all of us I think is crucial, and this is from the Word. What we're talking about today is just testimonies. God wants to give us all testimonies, living epistles, read of all men, written by the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit, I talked about this on a Zoom call recently with some of the guys here, but the Holy Spirit, Jesus said, is like wind. So you don't know where it comes from, you don't know where it goes. So is everyone who's born by the Holy Spirit. So, I walked in here today, and if I stopped and paid attention, I could feel the Holy Spirit like on my cheek, right? But if I don't pay attention to it, I'm never going to notice it. You got to be looking for it. The second thing is if I really stop and pay attention, I can tell the direction that wind is blowing. That's what it's like for us.
That's good.
We have to stop, and we have to.
That's the advantage.
Yeah, and even today, I woke up today, and God gave me like 6 specific things to get done today that are crucial. 6 specific things. And, for us, that meeting that I had in that hotel room, 6 months later, they could never get the product to where it needed to be. It ended up opening the door for me to get a meet with the Secretary of State in New York in a small group of people to have 1 million people studying Chinese by 2020 in the U.S., set up by President Obama and Xi Jinping. I got a visit with that same investor for a few days in New York. We stayed in New York together, and so I've gotten to learn from him. But it opened up the door. I found a lawyer, the only lawyer I could find in America at the time that understood China, internet tax law, and technology and software. That guy today is my partner.
Yeah.
So, you fast forward down the road, every single thing that I've done up to this point, I've got to build some of the fastest growing companies in America. I've worked all over the world.
We just see God's faithfulness.
Project management, and even for local businesses, I've gotten to learn how to do we have marketing software now that is specifically wired for different categories for companies. I could have never put all these things together. And then working with those Chinese teachers, I've never really used a teacher because I have my own way of learning Mandarin. But I started learning about different levels and learned that I'm like at a level 3 of 6 according to the Chinese government. So there's tests you can take to get accredited. All of that stuff for all of us, if we are tenacious enough and go after God enough, and if we just cling to Him and feed off His Word and make Him our focal point, He'll start to show us why we were created. He'll help us become that person, open up the correct doors, and He'll get us there.
Yeah, that's good. As we wrap up, why don't you invite the people to Friday groceries tomorrow at 10 o'clock in Mandarin? For all our Chinese people in Tulsa that need groceries tomorrow.
I don't know that I would know how to say groceries.
Tell them God loves them.
I say 我们的父亲真的爱你们, which means our Father, He loves you. He really loves you.
That's good.
和他真的想你们知道他. So and He really wants to know you.
That's really good. We don't have time to tell the story about when you took me to a Chinese massage parlor.
No. It was a Christian Chinese.
It was a good environment. It was just funny because he did his Chinese thing and I didn't have a clue what was going on. And we'll have to save that story for next time.
Chinese foot massage.
Yeah.
Totally.
Totally worth it. Hey, thank you for spending time with us today. Thank you for telling your story and being with us. And thank you for those of you who listened and watched. I know that you've been inspired. I know you have takeaways. And I would say the biggest takeaway is to trust God with the process. There's so many things we don't understand along the way. There's so many moments when we can't see but the next step in front of us. But you can always going to be able to zoom out and see God's hand, God's faithfulness. God loves you. God picked you. God will bring people across your path. God will get His message to your heart, and He wants to get to you what He's always had for you. He's not making it up on the fly. And so thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Trust God. keep that clear vision in front of you. Make a list of the things that you want and walk around your house and read it like Joyce Meyer did. And join us right back here next week, next Thursday at 12 o'clock for Guts Discipleship Live. Friday groceries tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And, of course, services online this Sunday again at 9:30 and 11. So, Harold, thank you for your time today, brother.
Thanks for having me.
And God bless y'all. Y'all go win as you go preach.